The 112nd day of Marchtober in the year 2021, by quarantine guesstimation, my childhood home, Abbeyview, Dunfermline, Fife, Scotland, Europe-ish, planet Earth. The second or third, depending on locality, lockdown of this era. There and Back Again, An Actor's Tale, by Emma Lynn Harley. Now, where to begin? Ah, yes, concerning actors, or performers, directors, stage managers, light and sound bringers, playwriters, and any other maker involved in the making of live performances. Theatre maker, to verbally package all of the things you do into one neat, hobbit-sized whole, which doesn't quite sound as neat as the one-word descriptor, actor. So, concerning actors. Makers concerning makers. Makers have been living and creating in the towns of Fife for many hundreds of years. Quite curious to poke and prod at the world of the big folk, Scotland being after all full of strange creatures beyond count. Makers must seem of little importance in the grand scheme of things, being neither renowned as having proper jobs, nor, for the most part, counted amongst the very rich. In fact, it has been remarked upon that the only real passion of the maker is for art. A rather unfair and somewhat pretentious observation, as we have also developed a keen interest in developing communities, telling untold stories, and submitting our own tax returns. But where our hearts truly lie is in entertainment, in digesting life and transforming the world as we watch it go by in the good tilled earth of a fertile idea. For all makers share a love of ideas that grow. There and Back Again. A slight disclaimer. As I film this, I'm not physically in Dunfermline. I wasn't sure if I should make this film and pretend or otherwise. I came to stay in a friend's spare room a couple of weeks ago to help them look after them following surgery, and likewise they are helping me out with a spare room that I'm not sharing with my dad's office. Anyway, back to the point. Dunfermline is where I've lived since I was a baby. Townhill, Rosyth and Abbeyview until I was 17, and now again at 26. This is supposed to be an autobiographical film. But how do you distill 26 years of life into a few minutes? So if you were to live my life in a movie sequence, you're born. You fall in love with books before you can read because they're great to chew on. In primary 1, your name gets picked first out of the hat for the nativity play, but the teacher throws it in the bin, because when asked if you'd rather be a sheep or an angel, you say Mary as the only option you'll accept. You sing in the church your grandparents take you to and in the school choir. You learn to play a shaky version of the Titanic theme tune on recorder. You go to high school and get so invested in the school shows that you lose friends. You go on a school trip to watch Hamlet. It's a bit rubbish, and for some reason Ophelia and her brother keep kissing in a way that makes everyone uncomfortable. But then you go on another school trip to watch a play about boxing, and it makes you feel something you've never felt before in your life. Like falling in love and taking off into flight at once, condensed into a room full of strangers on a Wednesday morning in a dark room. And you know, this is what you have to do. This. So you move out at 17, study theatre in Edinburgh for 4 years, and then the American National Theatre Institute for another 6 months. You are the first Scottish person to study there, and you are excited. But then you come home, and you're behind. Everyone you spent 4 years getting to know has their own projects now, and you're not in them, so you have to start again. You get a steady acting job in a tourist attraction, and another selling ice cream and drinks in a theatre, and then another dancing and singing on tables, and then another touring tourists. You've had first job, yes, but what about second job? And third job? You get your first freelance professional job the next year that isn't just a split of ticket money. Fourth job? And so on. You do what you really want to do when you're not earning money to survive and are lucky enough to be picked from the massive pool of other makers trying to make it. This is the week in March you will remember. You lose all of your contracted work for the next year in the space of a couple of days, and not knowing where your next rent is going to come from, you come back. Now, we know back is not always necessarily a bad thing. Back is not necessarily backwards. Back is home. Back is family and rest and discovering the things you never noticed as a child. But back is because of the L word. The dreaded L. L for lockdown. L for loss of work. L for loss of income. Loss of a home that you called your own, even if it was just rented. For a loss of the active making that makes you a maker. L is for Lord of the Rings, extended edition binge. L is for lavender out of control in your parents' garden. L is for life. The life you had grew from a seed watered by a singing kettle with a pot handle lid of metal. The life you are growing now was panic bought from the gardening section of the B&Q and watered by a cheap green plastic watering can. Spoiler alert. When Bilbo goes away on an adventure in The Hobbit, it's mostly full of dwarves and dragons and amazing adventures, but when he gets home, everyone thinks he's dead and is selling off his stuff. When Frodo goes off on his adventure in The Lord of the Rings, going back to the Shire isn't even an option for him. He can't go back after he casts the ring into the fire. So we know through fiction that you can't come back unchanged from an adventure. And I am changed. By the visiting primary school drama teacher, I am changed. By the games I played on playground fields in the rain, and by shows I got to see because the flame of creativity was seen to be worth fanning. And I am changed by every story I ever read and dreams fed by visiting players in assembly halls. I grow under lantern light in black box studios and lecture halls. I am lucky to stand in because Scotland sees education as a right, as is art. But this past year has been a constant fight, climbing up from the crack between hasty financial safety nets, and I am changed by the stacking of bets against anyone who dares to want to tell stories under a government full of people who would rather we would just shut up and retrain. I am informed by and build on the stories that existed before me, and all I can hope is that I leave behind a story or two that lingers on. Even despite hardships, as long as good stories exist, people will be inspired to make more. And the more support there is for those who, like me, will go ahead and do it anyway despite being told that's a very hard career, the more varied and rich stories we'll get to enjoy in the future. Tolkien puts my feelings on this time far better than me. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer.